Good evening, everyone. Good evening, guys. Welcome back to our day 6 of our FDP, SDP, STTP on Python for AI 2025. So, today we are going to start with a new topic. It is functions, right? So, for that, before understanding what is a function and the concepts related to function, we quickly recap what we have covered in the last session, right? So, we started understanding Python from day 1. We understood the history, then followed by the features of Python, right? And we have installed a software called Anaconda Navigator. As part of Anaconda Navigator, there are multiple IDEs, right? So out of these IDEs, we started hands-on using Spider. Then next to installation of the software, we started understanding the fundamental concepts like variables, then data types. We understood the purpose of data types and all the different data types in Python, all the 14 types. Next to data types, we also understood operators in Python, the purpose of operators. Why should we learn operators? Okay, what is the purpose of it? And all the 7 different types of operators we have learned. And in the last class, we understood the concepts of conditional statements and loops, as well as we have also understood loop control statements. So all these 3 are part of flow control statements. They are part of flow control statements in Python. What is the purpose of conditional statements? Conditional statements help us to perform an operation. We can do some XYZ operation for once. Mark this word, for only once, when X condition is true or some other Y condition is also true. So as part of conditional statements, we have discussed 4 types. Am I right? What are the 4 different types of conditional statements that we have discussed, guys? Simple if, then if else, if else, and finally match keys. All of these are part of conditional statements. Right? Yes. The next 2 conditional statements, we also understood the concept of loops. What is the purpose of loops? They help us to do an operation. We can do an operation for n number of times, for finite number of times, till the condition becomes false. So under loops, what are the different types of loops we have? For loop, while loop. For loop and while loop. What is the difference between for loop and while loop? For loop is also called as for else loop. While loop is also called as while else loop. So the else block that we have under these loops is not mandatory. It's optional. Right? Yes. In order to control these loops, we have understood loop control statements. What are loop control statements that we have understood? Continue, break, and pass. And pass. So these are the 3 different loop control statements that we have discussed, which help us to actually control the loops. What does continue statement does? Guys, what does continue statement does? Everyone have to respond here. Don't sit silent. Yes. So continue statement actually helps us to skip the current iteration wherever the condition is met. Okay. Only for that particular iteration, only for that particular iteration, the condition will be skipped. The rest of the statements will get skipped. Whereas break helps us to terminate the loop. It stops the loop. Break stops, but continue will not actually stop, guys. It will skip the iteration. Wherever the condition is met, only for that current condition, okay, wherever for whichever iteration the condition is met, only for that current iteration, it skips the rest of the statements. Whereas break will help us to stop. It terminates the loop. And pass is used as a placeholder in loops. When you don't want to do anything, and if you want to write a for loop or while loop, okay, you can use pass, which does not, which does nothing. So these are the different concepts that we have learned as part of last session. And in today's session, we'll be understanding functions in Python. What is a function? What is the purpose of function? Okay, the syntax for function, how we have to define a function. Then the concept of arguments and parameters. And in Python, we have different arguments and parameters. Okay, there are multiple types. We'll be understanding all the different types, followed by lambda functions. It's one of the type of function. Okay, so we'll be understanding lambda functions as well. Later on, next to lambda functions, we'll also discuss special type of functions called map, reduce, and filter. Map, reduce, and filter. So all these three special functions we'll be understanding in today's class. So this will be the agenda for the day. Okay, I hope it is clear. I'll start with the concept of functions. Yes. Right. So let us understand what are functions in Python. What is the concept of functions? So guys, if you are aware of functions in general, can you tell me what you are aware of? What do you mean by a function? What is the purpose of it? Excuse me. The concept of functions, why we actually use functions is they help us to do some operations. Certain operations can be performed using functions, but the main concept behind functions, the purpose of using functions is they provide code reusability. They provide code reusability. What do you mean by code reusability, guys? Is, see, if I want to do some XYZ task or say if I want to add two numbers, I have two numbers and if I want to add them, okay, we know that there is an operator in Python. What it is? Addition operator, which helps us to return the sum of two numbers or numbers, right? So if I use addition operator, will I get the output? Yes, I'll get the output. But what if I want to perform the same task for n number of times? N number of times in sense, if I want to perform the same task on different numbers, instead of using the same operator time again, why don't I keep this entire code within a function, and once after having this function, can I reuse it? Yes. That is called code reusability. You are able to reuse the code. Initially, you'll be defining your function, and once after the function got defined, you can use it for multiple times. What you are using? I'm using function. But in the backend, what do you have? You actually have the logic, right? This logic is actually returning us the output. So the main purpose of using functions is code reusability. They provide code reusability. But if anyone asks you what is a function, function is nothing but subprogram of main program. Within the main program, you'll find subprograms. So that is nothing but a function. Or a part of main program is a function. A part of main program is function. And the functions concept will reduce the code. It will optimize the code and time, right? So when you want to save your time, when you also want to optimize your code, why don't you come up with a function so that you can use a function for multiple times, right? Then coming to the parts of function. In function, there are two parts. One is function definition and the other one is function call. What is function definition? Function definition is nothing but, initially you will be defining your function. Yes, that is called function definition. And within your script, function definition will only exist for once. Because if you define once, you can call it for multiple times. Once if you define your function, will you define keep on? No. Once after defining it, you can directly use it. That is called function call. You are calling the function. But how many times can you call the function? N number of times. N number of times you can call the function. Hope it is making sense. But without defining a function, is it possible to call a function? No. You will get a name error. You'll get an exception with name error. So that means only after defining, you have to call it. Before defining, if you try to call the function, you'll get an exception called name error. Okay, so I'll repeat once again quickly. The purpose of function is it provides code reusability. Okay, functions actually help us to optimize our code and time. Then what exactly is function? Part of main program is nothing but function. And within function, there are two parts. One is called function definition and the other one is called function call. What is function definition? The part where you define your function is called function definition. And what is function call? Once after defining it, you'll call the function, you'll be using it. So that is called function call. Right. So I'll proceed because we have to come up with some functions, right? Obviously, we have to do hands-on. Before doing hands-on, let us understand the syntax for defining a function. Because syntaxes are mandatory. Even if you observe yesterday conditional statements, looping statements, for all these we have syntaxes. In the same way, function also has a syntax. What is the syntax for function? Is def keyword followed by function name. Def keyword followed by function name. Then next to the function name, you will find parenthesis. You'll observe parenthesis. Within the parenthesis, you can pass parameters. What are these parameters? We'll understand. Then colon symbol. Colon symbol represents indentation. Indentation symbol, colon. So once after keeping the colon, you can keep your logic down to it. Next to it, you can keep your logic. So this is the syntax for function. For defining a function, this will be the syntax. So within the logic, you also see docstring. So it is always the best practice providing with a docstring, which means what is the purpose of docstring is when someone goes through your function. Okay, assume that say your professor is going through your function that you have defined, or your team lead is going through your function that you have defined. So when you actually use this docstring, this will help us to define, you'll be keeping it very clear what is the purpose of the function here. Okay, that will be mentioned as part of docstring, guys, and then followed by the logic, which are nothing but the block of statements. So this is the syntax for function. So here is an established, well-defined image which talks about the syntax of function. So let us understand once again. So this entire part is called function definition. You are defining your function here. Def keyword followed by function name. Then within the parenthesis, we'll keep the parameters. Then next to it, we'll have colon, which represents indentation symbol. So this part is called function heading. This is called function heading. Next to it, you are keeping the logic. So that is called function body. That is called function body. Right? So in the syntax of function, if you observe, we have only one keyword. What it is? Def. Def is the keyword, guys. Def is a keyword and function name can be anything. Okay. So it's always recommended to come up with user-friendly names. Whatever the function, what is the purpose of the function? Okay. Accordingly, if you name your function, that is well appreciated. User-friendly. Right? Then the list of parameters. So we'll understand what are these list of parameters and all. We'll understand. What does the docstring represent? It actually helps us to describe the functionality. See, what exactly is this function doing? It's always recommended to come up with this docstring, the best practice. Okay, then next to it we'll have the block of statements, one by one the logic. So this is called function definition together. Both function heading and function body you'll observe in function definition. Now let me do one thing. I'll go to some examples, okay, where we'll be defining some functions and you guys focus. Be active. I want everyone to answer my questions from here onwards because functions is one of the important topic, guys. even as part of interviews, you will be questioned on functions. Okay, so what are we trying to do here? What am I trying to do here? If you observe carefully, the syntax that we have, is it mapping with the syntax of function? Yes, it is. def keyword followed by function name. What is the name of my function? Add op, which is nothing but add operation, addition operation. So instead of keeping the entire name, I came up with some user-friendly name. Add op, then followed by parenthesis. Right? So next to parenthesis, we have indentation symbol. Okay. So if you click on enter, immediately by default, it leaves 4 spaces, which tells that all these block of statements are part of function. Okay. So what is the logic that we have as part of this function? Try to understand, guys. I'm using input function, okay, in order to get the value for A and the same for B. Two input functions I'm using in my logic in the block of statements of my function, okay, which help us to get the values, okay, the value for A and B. By taking the value of A and B, I'll be performing arithmetic operation. What is the arithmetic operation that we are performing here? It is addition. It is addition. So A and B and A plus B will be formatted in this message. Okay, so here A value gets formatted. Next to it, B value gets formatted. And next to it, A plus B value gets formatted. So that is what it is going to get printed. That will be the final output for, this particular function. So that means here we are defining our function, guys. We are defining our function. This part is called function heading and this part is called function body. Okay, so let me define my function. Yes, the function add op got defined. Once after defining, can I call it? Yes, you can call it. So I'm calling the function in line number 1820. I'm calling it add op, which means you are calling the function add op. When you execute the function call, it starts executing this function in the backend. Initially, line number 1817 gets executed. What do you see here in the console? Within the console, you see enter first value for addition. So the message got printed. We are supposed to enter a value. Okay, so I'll give the value as 25. Once after giving the value, what happens? This value will be taken by input function where by default str type will be used, okay, to store this 25, but we are performing type conversion. We are performing type conversion using float function. This 25, which is of str type, will be converted to float type, which becomes 25.0. See, I'll click on enter. Then immediately it is also asking us to enter the second value for addition. Yes. So I'll give it as 30. Done? Yes. What are the values of A and B? 25.0, 30.0. Okay, I have entered 25 and 30 only. But these values got converted to float. 25.0, 30.0. When you add both of them, you'll get 55.0. Done. In the same way, can I also come up with one more function which helps us to, calculate the difference? Yes. Yes. So if you see here, I'm coming up with a function. I'm defining a function. Okay, I'm following the syntax. def keyword followed by function name. What is the name of my function? Sub op, which is nothing but subtraction operation. Sub op is nothing but subtraction operation. Okay. Sub op, then parenthesis. I'm not passing any parameters. So next to it we have colon. Then next to it we have the function body. The function body. What do you see in the function body? The logic. Same. From the end user, we can get the first value and the second value. So these values will be assigned to X and Y. They get stored in X and Y. And once after having the values of X and Y, we can get the difference of X and Y. So these values of X, Y, X minus Y gets formatted in the message and that gets printed. Okay, so let me define my function, guys. First of all, let me define my function. Done. Yes, the function got defined. I am calling the function. I am calling it. Observe carefully. So it started asking the values. Yes. So let me give the values 30, then some 60. What will be the output? In case of 30 and 60, when I pass 30 and 60 for X and Y, okay, what will be the output for the function call? Minus 30, because 30 minus 60 will be minus 30. As these values are converted to float, you will get the output as minus 30.0. Okay. So pay attention, guys. In the same way, I'm also coming up with one more function. Okay. So I'm defining a function. This function is for what? What is the purpose of this function? Observe here. What is the purpose of it? Which operator is this? Multiplication operator. So that means in the similar manner, I'm defining a function for multiplication of two numbers. Multiplication of two numbers. Simple. Okay. I'll follow the syntax def keyword. Then I'll come up with a user-friendly, function name. Then next to it, I'm coming up with parenthesis. Okay. Then indentation symbol. As part of function body, I'll keep the block of statements. Yes. So this function for multiplication got defined. I'll call the function. Let me call it. So when I call the function, will it start asking the values? Yes, it starts asking the values. So let me pass the values 20 for the value X takes 20.0 and Y takes some around 50.0. What is the output? 1000.0. 20 multiplied by 50 is 1000, and since the values are in float decimal values, you'll get the output as 1000.0, guys. You'll get the output as 1000.0. I hope it is clear. Right? Yes. and one more function for performing division of two numbers, division and floor division as well. If you observe, we have division and floor division. 1837 is for division and 1838 is for floor division. Yes. So I'll define my function first of all. So when I define my function, okay, it got defined. Now I'll call the function. See, the approach is same. What is being changed is the operator. In each and every example, the operator is what we are changing is. Accordingly, I'm naming my function. Accordingly, I'm changing the name of my function. So when I say enter first value for division, so probably I'll keep it as 100. 100. So this 100 will be converted to 100.0. 100 gets converted to 100.0. And for y, let me pass 10. What will be the output for division and floor division? What will be the output for division and floor division? Because in this example, in this function, we have both division operator and floor division operator. So which will return us the output for both the operators. So what will be the output here? Hmm? The output will be same. It will be 10.0 and sorry. Yes, it will be 10.0 and 10.0. Why? Why? Why it is 10.0 in both the cases? First of all, try to understand. We know that division operator always returns a float value as output. So all of you have, gave the best answers as part of division operator. But why is floor division returning 10.0? Is you have to understand. Because what value am I passing for x? 100. What is the value that you are passing for y? 10. Yes. So this 100 will be converted to 100.0 because I am performing type conversion, float. Float function is what we are using. So when we pass 10, 10 becomes 10.0. As both the values are float, so even for float division also you'll get float value as output. Making sense? Yes. Good. Focus guys. Right? Yes. So I hope you got a clear picture how we have to define the functions and how we are supposed to call the functions. Now, for defining and calling the functions, there are actually there are multiple number of approaches. There are four number of approaches, okay, to develop the function. We'll be understanding one by one approach. So for each and every approach, you'll understand the difference. So in approach one, like how to define, how to develop a function, the input will be from function calls. What is function call? Post defining a function, you are calling it, right? As part of using, you are calling the function, yes. So inputs will be from function calls, but processing will be in function body. Within the function body only you'll have the processing, but input and output will be from function call. So if you don't understand how we have to develop a function using approach one, we have a small example. Let us try to understand it. We have developed the function using approach 1. See, what am I doing here? What is this? What is this? This is nothing but a function. How do you decide whether it is a function or not? I see the keyword def, then followed by the name. Some, whatever might be the name, it is nothing but the function name. Next to it, we have parenthesis. Within parenthesis, there are parameters a comma b. Then we have indentation symbol. So this is obviously telling about a function syntax. This is representing function syntax. So we are defining a function. What is the name of my function? Sum op. Some operation, right? Then what is the logic that we have within the function body? What is the logic that we have? The logic says a plus b. Whatever the values that a and b have, a and b stored. So these values should be added and that final result should be stored in NEUT. Okay, this NEUT, whatever the value that is stored in NEUT should be written. What is written? Written is a keyword, okay, which we generally use as part of function, okay, which help us to give the result. Right? So I'm defining my function. I'm defining my function. Done? Yes. Then before calling the function, I should also have the values of a and b. Yes, only if I pass values for a and b, then I can get the output when I call it. So I'll be using input function to get the value for a. So when I say enter first value, okay, I'll be passing a value randomly. Done. A stores 10.0. Why 10.0? Because it got converted to float. Because of float function, the conversion was being done. In the same way, B also takes one more value in the same manner. Yes. Let me give 20. So B stores 20.0. Now, what am I doing? I'm calling the function sum op. I'm calling the function sum op. Okay. But within sum op, am I passing A and B? Yes. A stores 10.0 and B stores 20.0. So, where you are passing the inputs? The inputs are from function call. Within the function call only you are passing the inputs. Then, once after passing the inputs, the processing will be done here. Okay. The processing will be done here. Then, the output, if you come back, again, where we are getting the output? We are going to get the output in function call. Right. So let me call the function. When I call the function, it will give us the value. NEUT stores 30.0. NEUT stores 30.0. Then finally I'll use print function to print the output. The formatting will be done and sum is equals to 30.0 will be written as output. So if you observe in approach 1, only processing is done in function body. Inputs and output are done at function call. So this is approach 1. What does approach 2 says? Approach 2 says input taking inside the function body. Within the function body itself, you will be taking the inputs. Like whatever we have done previously, okay, the examples. Within the function body itself, you'll get the inputs. Processing will be done in the function body itself. And result also will be returned. The output in function body only. So everything will be done in function body. Nothing from function call. If you call it, you'll get everything. The processing will be done. The result also will be returned. Right? So let us understand an example with respect to approach 2. Approach 2. If you observe here, what am I doing? What am I doing, guys? I am defining the same function. Okay, whatever the function that I have defined earlier, I am defining the same function. But this time, where do we have the inputs coming from? Within the function body. If you observe, the inputs are coming from the function body itself. Then the processing is also done in the function body. And the results, the output is also given from the function body only. So this is approach 2. This is approach 2. So let me define my function. There is no change with respect to the logic, but the way of writing the code, the approach is different. Okay. So I'll define my function sum OP. I'll just call it. If I call it, inputs will be taken in the function body itself, processing will be done in the function body, and the output will also be from function body. Even I have the print function, the last print statement within the function body itself. So if I call, everything will be done from function body. So it is asking me to enter the first value. Yes. So let me, pass first value, 25. Then second value, some around 50. You see here, 25.0, 50.0, and what is the output? 75.0. Everything was done inside the function body. Now, let us understand approach 3. Approach 3. Approach 1 says input and output from function call and processing in function body. Approach 2 tells all input, processing and output from function body itself. Now let us understand approach 3. What does approach 3 say? Approach 3 says input from function call. Input from function call. Processing, we know anyhow it should be part of function body. But the result, the output from function body. So from function body, you are going to get 2 here. The processing will be done and the output body will also be part of, the output will also be part of function body. Only inputs you'll be getting from function call. That is approach 3. The difference. Right? So let us have the example. If you observe, what am I doing? The same function, I am defining the same function sum OP, but do you have the inputs coming from the function body? No. The inputs are coming from function call. Right? The inputs are coming from the function call. Output is from function body. Because if you observe carefully, I have the print function within the function body itself. So when I try to call it by passing these values, the inputs, see, let me pass the values one by one. Some 30, then 60, What is the overall output? 90. 90.0. Okay, so that's how you can develop your program. You can develop your function in different approaches. And finally, approach 4. By this time, you should have understood approach 4 also. Right? So approach 4 is complete opposite to approach 3. Input taking inside the function body. Processing in function body. Output from function call. So this is quite opposite to approach 3. If you observe, input from function call in approach 3, whereas input coming from function body in approach 4. But output will be from function body in approach 3, whereas output will be from function call in approach 4. So these two are quite opposite. Right? Now, let us also understand how we can develop using approach 4. See, I am defining my function, but from where am I getting the inputs? From function body. Processing anyhow it will be in function body. And final result, the output will be from function call. Right? So let me define the function first of all. I'll define the function. Okay. Function got defined and I'm calling the function, guys. The function that we have defined, I'm calling it. When I call the function, it starts executing these statements one by one. So it is asking us to enter the first value, some 30. Okay. Then second value, 70. Enter. What is the result that got stored? 100? Yes. But did it return us any output? No. So I'll use the print function in the function call to get the output. Now I'll see the output in the console. So these are the 4 different approaches. These are the 4 different approaches to develop our functions. Yeah, you can use any one of these approaches. Either keeping the input and output both in the function body or in the function call, or keeping input in function call and output in function body, or vice versa. So out of these 4, any of these approaches is accepted. Right? So we have got enough experience with respect to functions. Now let us talk about parameters and arguments. The next topic that we have is parameters and arguments. What are these parameters and arguments in Python? So if you observe, what is the syntax of function? def keyword, function name, parenthesis. Within parenthesis, you have understood earlier, we can pass parameters within this parenthesis, right? These are called parameters. Okay. So that means we are going to understand what are parameters and arguments and the different types of, argument parameter passing mechanisms. So there are different types. We'll be understanding one by one, guys. Okay. Right. So when it comes to parameters, we have 2 different types of parameters in functions. What are they? Formal parameters and local parameters. They are formal parameters and local parameters. What are formal parameters? The formal parameters represent the parameters that we keep in function heading. Within the function heading, you will be using some parameters. They are called formal parameters. These variables are called formal parameters. Why? They are part of function heading. This is called function heading. Yes. What is the purpose of these? They help us to store or hold the values coming from function calls. When you're calling it, actually, when you're calling the function, you'll be passing the values. So these values will be stored using these formal parameters. Then we also have local parameters, also called as local variables. Okay, but anyways, what are these local parameters? The parameters, the variables that you use in function body. So within the function body, if you use any of the variable, it is called local parameter. And the purpose of local parameter is for storing temporary results. They help us to store temporary results. The results will be stored temporary. Okay, in the memory only for the time. So these are local parameters. C will become a local parameter. But A and B will become formal parameters. You have to understand the difference. The variables that you use in function definition are called formal, and the variables that we use in function body are called local. Right? Then coming to, we also have the concept of arguments. What are arguments? Arguments are nothing but the variables that you use in function call. Okay. So once after defining it, you will use it. How? By calling it. So when I call it, okay, I'll be using some variables. Yes, these variables are called arguments. These variables are called arguments. Arguments are the variables which we use them in function call. Function call. And these arguments are also called as actual arguments, guys. They are also called as actual arguments. Right. Now let us understand the different types of mechanisms. What are these different types of mechanisms? We have arguments, parameter passing mechanisms. The different types of arguments, parameter passing mechanisms we'll be understanding one by one. Why, these values, the argument values should be passed to the formal parameters? Yes. When you are calling the function, obviously these values should be passed to formal parameters. So this type of mechanism is called argument parameter passing mechanism. Right? So let us understand these mechanisms, the different types of mechanisms one by one. Okay. In Python, there are in total 5 different types of argument parameter passing mechanism. What are they? Positional parameters arguments, default parameters arguments, keyword parameters arguments, variable length parameters arguments, and keyword variable length arguments or parameters. So we'll be understanding all these 5, and guys, these are very important. These are very, very important in the topic of functions. Yes, you can expect a question. Right? So pay attention, we'll be understanding the concepts of all the different types of arguments, parameter passing mechanisms. Right? So let me start with the first one. What is it? Positional parameters, arguments. Right? So what are these positional parameters or arguments? Is positional parameters say that the number of arguments, nothing but the actual arguments, must be equal to formal parameters. When you are calling the function, you will pass the values for your arguments. Yes. So the number should match with the number of formal parameters that we use in function definition. That is the concept of positional arguments. Okay. They give more importance for order. The order will be followed as it is. That is why they are named as positional arguments. Okay. And Python by default follows positional parameters, positional arguments. Right. So here is a small syntax for positional arguments. How do we represent them? So the same df keyword function name. Then you can have multiple positional arguments, positional parameters. So param1, param2, so on, param_n. So this is nothing but function definition. You are defining your function. Yes, we are defining our function. But what if you call the function? When you call the function, you'll also pass arguments, the values for the formal parameters. Yes. Argument 1, argument 2, argument 3, so on. So, what does positional arguments or positional parameters say is the number of arguments that we pass during function call should match with number of formal parameters. If you pass 10, even in the function call also they should have 10. There should be 10 different parameters. Okay. And argument 1 will be passed to param1. Argument 2 will be passed to param2. So on. Argument n will be passed to param_n, parameter n. So on what basis these values are getting passed? Based on order. Based on their position. That is why they are named as positional parameters or arguments. And this is very important. Python by default follows positional parameters. Okay, so let us work out on a few examples related to positional arguments or parameters. Okay, so what are we doing, guys? Line number 1907. What am I doing here? I am defining a function, right? So if you observe, serial number, name, marks will be formal parameters. They are nothing but formal parameters. And the logic of the functions is, to just format the values that you get for serial number, name and marks in this message. Okay. In this message. So these values get formatted with a tab space separated. These values will be separated by tab space. How do I understand it? \t is a character for tab space, right? So what I'll do is I'll define the function initially. I'll define the function. So function definition is done. Then I'm calling the function. I'm calling the function. So now when I'm calling the function, I'm passing the values. Yes, these are called arguments. These are called arguments. So positional arguments or parameters says that the number of arguments that you pass should match with number of formal parameters. How many am I passing? 3. How many do I have parameters? 3. So will it run? Yes. It will execute where serial number takes 10, name takes ROSM and marks takes 33.33. Right? But will serial number take 33.33? No. No. Why? Positional argument gives more priority to the order such that serial number always takes 10. Name takes row sum and marks takes 33.33. So let me execute, guys. See, did serial number take 10? Yes. Which value should be formatted initially? Serial number. That is why you see 10. Next to it you have the name and finally the marks. So that means positional arguments, they take these argument values based on their position. Right. So I'm coming up with one more example. What will be the output in this case? What will be the output? 20, Gosling and 11.11. Good. In the final one, excuse me. Output for the final one, 30, NEUT 66.66. That's it. I hope you got the point. Okay. So based on the position, it is actually taking the values, right? And we have one more example for positional arguments. So focus. What am I doing? I am defining a function. Display student info is the function name. And within the function, what are the different formal parameters that we have? Serial number, name, marks, and city. All of these will be formal parameters. Why they are called formal parameters? Because the parameters that we have, the variables that we have in the function heading are called formal parameters. And what does the logic say? What does the block of statement say is to format the values of these serial number, name, marks, and city in a message separated by tab space is what the block of statement say. Done. We have defined the function. Now I am calling the function, guys. I am calling the function. So what will be the output for line number 1919? 1919, what will be the output? It will be simple. Serial number takes 40, name takes Travis, marks takes 77.77 and city takes Hyderabad. In the same order, it takes the values and returns the output. For the next example, 1920. The output will be 50, Kinney and the values. Hyderabad, so on. Yes. So this is all about positional arguments or parameters. Let us go to the next type of arguments parameters. It is default parameters or arguments. It is called as default parameters or arguments. What is the purpose of these default arguments? Let us understand. When you have a common value, when there is a common value, okay, for multiple function calls, when you want to give just a common value, even for a parameter, for an XYZ parameter, okay, as part of function call, then such type of value will be a default parameter. It will be taken as a default parameter. Okay, so this value will be fixed. It will be the default one, right? So here, if you observe, if you observe carefully within the syntax, def keyword and the function name, I have formal parameters. Yes, param1, param2, param n minus 1, param n. All of these are nothing but formal parameters. I see for param n minus 1 and param n, the values are fixed. We have some default values. So these parameters will be default parameters. They are called as default parameters. What about param1 and param2? Param1 and param2 are nothing but positional parameters. They are positional. Hardly few minutes back we have understood, right? Python by default considers positional parameters. Default positional parameters will be considered. So param1 and param2 are positional parameters, whereas param n minus 1 and param n are default parameters. They are default parameters. So here is a note point that we have to keep in mind. When you use default parameters, when you are defining a function, and within the function, if you want to define a default parameter, okay, so this default parameter should be the last parameter. It should be the last parameter. Otherwise, what happens? We get a syntax error. Because you cannot have positional parameters next to default parameters. Impossible. So when you are defining itself, you have to ensure that the default parameters and the default values that you are going to assign for these default parameters should be placed at last. Right? So let us understand a few examples for default parameters or arguments. What am I doing? I am defining a function. Yes, we are defining a function. Okay. And what does this function say? It is the same function. There is no change with respect to the function that we have, discussed earlier. But what do you see the difference? I observe that earlier city is a positional argument, positional parameter. But here city is no more positional. City will be a default parameter. So within the function definition, I observe serial number, name and marks are positional arguments, positional parameters, whereas city is a default parameter. What is the default value for city? HYD, Hyderabad. Right? So the logic is same. Okay. So I'll define my function. I'm defining the function. Done. Now I'll start calling the function. Tell me what will be the output? What will be the output for line number 1928? How many values are you passing? 3. But how many parameters we have? 4. Will that execute first of all? Yes, it will execute. Don't assume that it will not execute. It will execute. Why it will execute? Why not it will not execute? Yes, it will execute because one of the parameter is default. Even though if I don't pass any value for this default parameter, it takes the default value. So serial number takes 50, name takes Kine, marks takes 55.55 and obviously city takes HYD. So this will execute. This will execute. So don't assume that this will not execute, guys. It will execute. Why? What is the purpose of default parameter? we can pass default values in the function definition only. Right? What will be the output for line number 1929? Nineteen 1929 will not execute. It will execute. Don't assume it will not execute. Why it will execute? Because serial number takes 60. Name takes trump. Marks will take 15.55. Then I understood why you have told that it will not execute. City, by default, if I don't pass any value, it takes HYD, guys. Okay. If I pass any value for city, city takes the value that we have passed. So that means city will take USA. Let me execute. City takes USA. Got it? If you don't pass, by default, it takes HYD. Okay. If you pass, the value that you have passed will be considered for default parameter. One more example. I want output for line number 1930. 1930. Yeah, it is similar, right? So it takes city as RSA. Yes, it is similar. To the previous one, it is similar. So obviously, city takes RSA. I hope it is clear, right? Now let us go to the next example. So where I am defining the function of, this is related to employees, employee details. Okay, where you have employee number, employee name, salary, and company name. Okay, so all of these parameters, are they positional or default? What kind of parameters are these? What kind of parameters? Yes, come on. They are nothing but default parameters. They are default parameters. How do you say whether they are default or not? In the function definition itself, you see the values, the default values for these parameters. So obviously all of them are default. All of these parameters are default. Right? What does my block of statement say? My logic says to take these values, okay, and format them in this message. So let me define my function initially. I'm defining my function. Done. Now I'll start calling the function. I'll start calling the function. Now tell me, guys, what will be the output for line number 1936? First of all, will it execute or not? Because I'm not passing any of the value. I'm not passing any value for, the parameters. Will it execute? Yes, it will execute. Taking the default values as is. 10, Naveen, 1.2 and NEUT gets printed. Good, good. Keep it up. Then, what will be the output for line number 1937? 1937. Simple. I'm passing value for enrollment number. So instead of 10, enroll number takes 20. And employee name takes Samir. But rest of the values shall takes 1.2 only. Company name will be NEUT only. Good. Then in the same way, output for line number 1938. I am calling the function again, but this time I am passing three values, three arguments. 30 Kumar 1.5. So these values will be taken by employee number, employee name and salary. The default name of the company will be as it is, NEUT. Good. What will be the output for the last line, 1939, where we are calling the function again and passing different values. I'm passing the values like 40, Kalam, 1.6 and IBM. So all the default parameters that we have, instead of taking the default values, they'll take the values that we pass. So these values will be returned as output. Good guys. So this is all about default parameters. Okay. So when you already have the default value will be taken. But if you pass any value for the default parameter, instead of considering the default value, it comes and takes the value that we have passed. So this is all about default parameters. The next type of parameters that we have are keyword parameters or arguments. The next type is called keyword parameters or arguments. So what are these keyword parameters? Let us understand the third type of parameters or arguments. Okay. So in some circumstances, okay, we know the function and we are also aware of the formal parameters. See, assume that you have defined the function and if you are also aware of the parameters, obviously you'll be aware of it, right? But what if the order of the parameters change? The order of these formal parameters, if you don't remember, okay, and as part of the function call, if you start passing the values, we know by default Python considers positional parameters, positional arguments, right? So when you actually don't know the order of your formal parameters, and if you want to pass the data, the values to these formal parameters accurately, then we use the concept of keyword parameters or arguments. Keyword parameters or arguments. How do we use these keyword parameters or arguments? In such a way that, see, we'll define the function. Yes, we'll define the function. If you observe here, param1, param2, param so on, param n are nothing but the formal parameters. Yes. Post defining it, I will call the function. And assume that I'm not, I don't memorize the order of these formal parameters. But if I want to pass the values to these parameters exactly, okay, then I'll use these keyword parameters. How? I'll use the parameter name, then followed by value. Parameter name followed by value. Parameter name and value. So here, if we observe, the parameters are called keyword parameters. These parameters are called keyword parameters. How you are passing the value? You are also using the keyword, nothing but the parameter. Yes. Yes. Right. So in this case, param n, param 1, whatever, all, okay, param n minus 1 are nothing but keyword arguments. They are keyword arguments. But you have to pass the values for all the keyword size. Using the keyword, you will be passing the values. Why are they named as keyword parameters or arguments? You will use the parameter name as keyword. The parameter will be used. But so far, if you remember, in positional or default, did we use the names? No, we haven't. We did not use any kind of keywords, right? So you'll observe the difference when you actually go through the hands-on part. So let us focus on a few examples related to keyword parameters. What am I doing? I am defining a function. What is the name of my function? Display. Display is nothing but display. So within the function definition, I have three formal parameters. They are A, B, C. And my block of code, block of statement says to format the values of ABC in this message. Simple. The logic is also very simple. Just one line. So this is my function. Now I'll start calling the function. When I call the function and if I pass the values directly, see 10, 20, 30. So A takes 10, B takes 20, C takes 30. Where 10, 20, 30 are nothing but positional arguments. They become positional arguments. Why they become positional arguments? Because these values are assigned based on their position. We have three parameters and we are also passing three arguments. So obviously they become positional arguments, guys. But what is the difference between positional arguments and keyword arguments? You'll understand the difference in the next line. In the next line, if you don't remember the value, the positions exactly, the order of ABC, but you know that there are ABC parameters. Why don't you use the keyword and pass the value? So in this line, A, B, C are nothing but keyword arguments. You are passing the values? Yes. But how you are passing? Using the keyword C is equals to 30, A is equals to 10, B is equals to 20. What will be the output, guys? Will it be 30, 10, 20? No. 30, 10, 20 will not be written. It will return 10, 20, 30 only. Since I used keyword arguments, I need not go in the same order. Order can change. I can change the order of ABC. So the output will be 10, 20, 30 only. Output will not change. But how am I passing the values is using keywords. I'm using keywords, then I'm passing the arguments. Right? Yes. It's time for an example for you. You guys have to do it. What will be the output for line number 1949? 1949. Yes, the output will be same. A takes 10, C is nothing but 30, B takes 20. The output will be 10, 20, 30. But A becomes a positional argument, whereas C and B will be keyword arguments. So here we used two different types of arguments. B and C represents keyword, whereas A represents a positional argument. Output for line number 1950. Yes, even the output will be same here. The output will not change. It will be 10, 20, 30 only. But 10 and 20 will be positional, whereas C will be keyword. That's how you have to interpret. Right? A small one more example related to keyword parameters or arguments, right? So I'm using the same function student display student details, okay, in which if you observe here, what is CRS? CRS is nothing but Python. I mean, CRS represents a default parameter which takes the default value as Python course. Okay, so what am I doing? I am passing values for serial number, SNAME and marks. So by default course will be Python. So this will execute as is. Not an issue. I am passing values for marks, S number, S name. But is the order same as is? No. Order is changed. But still I have used keyword arguments. As keywords are being used, the output will be 102 RT 33.33 and the default course is Python. Done. Then tell me what will be the output for line number 1958. Good. Output for line number 1958. Mark serial number S name. Excuse me. So we are using all of these keywords to pass the values. But what is this Java? Will course take Java? How many of you say it will execute? Excuse me. It will throw us an error. Why did we get an exception? Don't think course will be, Java is given to course. Java cannot be assigned to course. When you want to pass Java to course, you have to also specify CRS is equals to Java. But here what happened is, this Java is actually, we are not passing any keyword for it. Okay. So the error is because of a positional argument following keyword argument. So the order is very important. The order is very important. Always Java is a positional argument which should be at starting position. Next to positional, we have to have keyword arguments. Then the other types. Okay. So that is why we have an error, exception. Very important. Yes, if you specify the keyword, that will execute. It will execute. Let us understand the next type of arguments. It is variable length arguments. What are the next type? Variable length arguments or parameters. So let us understand the next type of arguments, guys. Right. When you want to pass, okay, say if you want to pass multiple values for one single parameter. So far, whatever the parameters that we have discussed, all of these parameters are just taking one value. Yes. Yes. So if you want to pass or if you want to store any number of values, you can pass n number of values. Okay. From multiple calls. From a single call, if you want to pass multiple number of values, we can go and use variable length parameter. And how do you represent variable length parameter? Using asterisk mark, which is nothing but the star symbol. Wherever you observe the star symbol, it means it is a variable length parameter. It is a variable length parameter. What is the purpose of it? The purpose of variable length parameter is it can accept any number of values. Any number of values can be passed. It can hold them. And by default, it accepts the values of type tuple. It accepts the values as a tuple object. And there are two important points that we have to discuss here coming to variable length parameters. Okay. So what is it? Wherever you observe this asterisk mark param, okay, wherever you observe this asterisk mark param, which means a variable length parameter, okay, so this parameter will be kept at the last part of function heading. When you are defining it, it should be kept at the last position and it should be only one. Why? If you have one, it can accept n number, right? What is the purpose of having multiple? Not required. So always, you should have only one variable length parameter in function definition. Then the other rule that we have is when we use this variable length parameter and default parameters together in the function definition itself, if you have both, so we use the default parameter as the last. By default, the default parameter will be used at the last position only. We cannot use the default parameter as keyword argument. Okay. So this is very important, guys. A default parameter should be kept at the last position. And before that, we use variable length parameter. Right. So let us focus on a few examples related to variable length parameters or arguments. So what am I doing here? I am defining a function which contains only one parameter. What is this parameter called? Variable length parameter. How do you identify it? There is asterisk mark. Right. So what does the logic says? The logic says taking one value at a time. We have for loop. So for loop, it takes each and every value from this tuple object and it prints the value by formatting, where after printing it should also end with space, and next to it has to print nothing. So this is the logic that I have for the function. So let me define my function. Done. So I'm passing one value for my variable and parameter. Will it take? Yes, it will take, and it will print only 10. What if I pass two values? Yeah, even though if you pass n values, it will take and it will execute. I'm passing three values. Yes, it takes and it executes. But this time, what am I doing? I'm passing 5 integers and one str value, str type object, right? So even though if I pass all of them, it takes and it executes and prints all of them one by one, side by side. Why are not getting line after the line? That is because of the end parameter that we have discussed earlier, right? And finally, I'm calling the function again. I'm passing two values, Java and Python. Yeah, it takes both of them and prints side by side. Simple. But this time, here it is very simple because I just used only variable length parameter earlier in the earlier example. But now we have different parameters, different, formal parameters. What is A representing? A is a formal, it's a variable length parameter. CRS, default parameter. SNAME, obviously SNAME will be a positional parameter, right? Then what does the logic says? The logic says to print initially 50, hyphens. Then initialize a variable with 0. Okay. Then to print a message in which the name S name will be formatted for name of the student, and next to it it also takes course and S name. Both of these will be taken and get formatted in this message. And finally, it takes every value from A. What is A? A is representing a variable length parameter. Okay. We have a for loop where the for loop takes one by one value from A, and these values will be printed side by side, and they will also be updated with S. The values will be added, and that final sum will be printed. So this is the logic of my function. This is the logic of my function. I have defined the function. Now I'll call the function. I'll call the function. So if I call the function, first of all, will it execute? Will it execute, guys? Yes, it will execute. Or will it throw me any error? See, even though if I don't pass for CRS, it returns, it takes Python. Even though if I don't pass any value for variable length parameter, still it accepts. But what if I don't pass any value for sname? Will it execute or not? What is sname here? Sname is nothing but positional argument. It's a positional parameter. But what am I doing? Am I passing any value for my positional parameter? No, I'm not passing. So this will return as exception. Why? You are supposed to pass value for sname. Mandatory. If you don't pass, you'll get error. The type error. See, missing one required positional argument. In the next line, I'm passing value for sname, guys. Hyderabad. What about course? It's DL, deep learning. And I'm not passing anything for variable length operator, variable length parameter, but still it executes. It still executes. See? Then, in the next example, I'm passing value for sname, but this time sname is not, it's not a position parameter, it's not a positional argument. It becomes a keyword argument. Why? I'm using the keyword, right, to pass the value. Sname is equals to Mohan. And course will be testing. I'm not passing any values for variable length parameter. Will it execute? Yes, it will execute by keeping the sum as 0. The sum will be 0. Right. What about line number 1990? Will it execute or not? Yep. If I pass only the value for sname, still it executes. See? Row sum will be taken as sname, and by default the course is Python. So obviously the sum will be 0. Why? We are not passing any values for the variable length parameter. Yes. Then the next line. Will it execute? Yes, it will execute. But what will be the sum here? Sum will be 10. Sum will not be 0 because 10 will be assigned to the variable length parameter. Line number 1992. Will it execute or not? Yes. S name is NUT. Okay. So what exactly happens here is you are passing multiple values, right? So which is not accepted. See, as you are passing multiple values, which is not accepted. So that is why it returns as exception. See, this keyword argument, it has to be placed initially. If you have placed it initially, then it might have executed. It will execute. See, if you observe, what am I doing? NUT will be taken by sname. 4, 5, -4, -5 will be taken by variable length parameter. But what about Java? Java will also be taken by variable length parameter only. If that is the case, how can we add 4, 5, -4, -5? I know this sum is 0. But if I add 0 plus Java, will it be Java or 0? So we'll get an exception which is not related to the operators. This is related to, the unsupported operands. That is the reason. And finally, what am I doing? Passing S name, RW, course name as ML. Yes. And for A, how many values are we passing? I'm passing only one? No. These values, if you keep at the last, will it execute? The positional arguments. Error. Positional arguments never follows keyword argument. This is very important. See, if you have removed these keywords and if you have placed them last and if you have kept all of them initially, it would have executed. So a keyword argument, has to be placed next to positional. Yeah, we know that we are passing 5 values, but the problem here is the position argument. See, these are nothing but I'm not using any keyword, right? Obviously, they become position. But a positional argument does not follow keyword argument. A syntax error will be raised, right? Yes. So we have, okay, the next type of parameters are keyword variable length parameters. The last type, this is very important, guys. So far, we have understood positional, default, then keyword arguments and variable length arguments. The last type is nothing but keyword variable length arguments or parameters. Right? So we understood keyword arguments. Yes, we have also understood variable length arguments. Am I right? Yes, we have understood both. So, what is the purpose of keyword variable length parameters or arguments is they help us to store or hold any number of key values coming from similar function calls. Yes, you can pass all of those values as positional arguments. That will execute. That will execute. Okay. Anyways, I'll come back. So the purpose of keyword variable and parameters is they help us to store, or hold any number of key value pairs coming from similar function calls. And by default, it uses the type dict. It uses the type dict. How do we represent keyword variable in parameters? Using double star. Single star is represented for, it is used for variable length parameters. Double star is for keyword variable length parameters. What is the purpose of it? It helps us to hold any number of key value pairs. And by default, it uses the type dict. It uses the type dict. So the important point that we have here under keyword variable and parameters is it should be only one, because you cannot have multiple like variable and parameters. It should be only one. One is enough. One can store multiple key value pairs. Right, obviously. So let us explore a few examples related to keyword variable length arguments or parameters. If you observe here, what am I doing? I'm defining a function, and within the function we have a keyword variable length parameter. How did I identify it? With the symbol double star. And the logic says to print 50 hyphens initially, then next to it, we know that it accepts multiple key value pairs, multiple key values. So when obviously the type will be dict guys. When what is the purpose of dict type? Dict data type help us to store the data in the form of key values, key value pairs. So on a dict data type, if you apply dict object, if you apply items function, it will return us both keys and values. It returns both keys and values. So K will take keys and V takes values. The value of K and V will be formatted in this message. Right? So that is the logic behind the block of statements. I'm defining the function done. And how many key value pairs am I passing? In the function call, only one. S number is equals to 10. So will this execute? Yes, it will execute. It will execute. Then next to it, how many key value pairs am I passing? 2. It accepts both. It helps us to store both the key value pairs, where the first key value pair is employee number is 100, employee name is JZ. See, the values gets formatted in this message. And I'm calling the function one more time. This time within the function call, I have 3 key value pairs. 3 key value pairs. Nothing but, all of these 3 are representing a keyword parameter, keyword arguments. Right? Done? Now, here is a small example, okay, where we have different types of arguments. So within this function, we have marks, CLS and SNAME are the different types of formal parameters that we have. Okay. So what are the different formal parameters that we have? This is nothing but, what is it? It's a keyword. There is no usage behind it. I just want to make it clear. Okay. Why am I using it time again is to just clearly differentiate the output. Okay. I am using it guys as part of our logic. If not, you can remove it. There is no particular reason behind it. Okay. That So this marks represent a keyword variable length parameter, and sname and CLS represents positional parameters. Right. So what are we doing? Initially, the sname and the class, CLS represents the class. Both of these will be formatted in the messages and they will be printed. Then next to it, I'm coming up with a variable. I'll initialize it to 0. Okay. Then we have a for loop in which from marks, what is marks? It's a keyword variable length parameter. So we know that marks accepts the values in dict object, right? So when you apply dict object with respect to items function, it returns both keys and values. So these keys and values will be formatted in the message again. Okay, and what's happening? We are also summing up the marks. Okay, so the total marks that we have for this, the sub marks. What is sub marks? Subject marks. The subject marks will be added and the value of total marks will be incremented. At the end, we are formatting the total marks in a message which returns the total marks of the student. So this is a program, a small function which accepts multiple subject marks of a student who is studying in so XYZ class. Okay, and all the details will be printed in the console. It will be written. Right. So what am I doing, guys? I am calling the function. Yes, I am calling the function where S name takes RS, CLS takes X. But what about other key values? Keyword value. I have multiple keyword and values. All of these will be taken by marks parameter because it can hold any number of keyword variable and values. Right? So if I execute, all these marks will be added. You see, student name is RS, studying in 10th standard. Okay. So we have the subject name and the subject marks. And the total marks are nothing but summation of all these marks. In the same way, can I also pass only one subject marks? Yes. What if I don't pass any keyword and the values? I'm not passing any key values. Simple. It does not take anything. So this line will execute. Still the line executes, guys. The line executes and the total marks will be 0. Okay. So that is how we use different types of parameters, arguments. So what are the different types of arguments that we have learned? Positional, default, keyword, variable length and keyword variable length. Right? So which one should be kept at the last? Default. What will be the first? Positional. Next to it we'll have keyword. Then variable length. Then we'll have keyword variable length. So this will be your order. Very, very important. Okay. So we understood arguments and parameters as well, right? So there are a special type of functions. Type of functions called anonymous functions or lambda functions. Okay, so the next concept is related to lambda functions. It is related to lambda functions. What are these lambda functions or anonymous functions? Anonymous functions are the functions which does not have any name. Earlier, if you observe when you are defining the function, do you also have the name for your function? Yes. But for lambda functions or anonymous function, there is no name. What is the purpose of this anonymous function? To perform instant operations. Instantly, if you want to perform anything and if you want to get the results, go with anonymous functions. That is the best approach. Okay, so the purpose of anonymous functions is to perform instant operations, and once after performing the operations, you may not use it. They are not required. Right? And these anonymous functions, you generally keep it in single statement. It just contains only single statement, not like general functions. Like how general functions are, you will have it in n number of lines. But anonymous functions or lambda functions, you'll have the entire logic in one executable statement. One single executable statement. Why are they named as lambda functions is we use a keyword called lambda. While defining an anonymous function, will use lambda keyword. That is why anonymous functions are also called as lambda functions. Here is a small syntax. The syntax has been provided. So lambda keyword followed by params list, nothing but parameters list, then colon your single statement. Whatever the logic that you want to keep, you can keep the single statement, and this is your lambda function. And assign this to a variable. So if you try to get the type of the variable name, it will return as the type as function. Function, which is nothing but variable name will act as function name. In case of anonymous function, variable name acts as the function name. Right? So let us understand a few examples related to lambda functions or anonymous functions. This is the general function, df keyword, function name, parameters, then logic and the keyword return. So this is a general function. If I want to do the same operation, if I want to keep the same operation using lambda function, I'll do it in this way. Lambda keyword, what are the operators, I mean the parameters that we have, a and b, a comma b. Then next to it, you'll have colon. Then the logic, a plus b is what it has to return. Done. Lambda functions are nothing but they are used for instant operations. In a one single line, you'll keep the entire logic and you'll store it in a variable. Done. Add OP. Excuse me. I'm calling the normal defined function. Okay, the normal function that we have defined sum OP and see what will be the results. What is the result? 30, because 10 plus 20 is 30. In the same way, let me go with lambda function add OP. Let me go with lambda function add OP. I'm calling it where I'll pass the values for a and b 10, 20. What is the output? Even the output is same here, 30. So with respect to output, there is no change, guys. There is no change with respect to the output. But if you observe the structure, a normal defined function, a normal function can have n number of lines. And there will be a function name. We'll use a keyword called def for defining it. But for a lambda function, you'll use lambda keyword. And the function will be kept in only one single line. Right? So I have one more lambda function here. So try to understand what are we doing here. I'm defining my lambda function. See, lambda keyword followed by the parameters L comma B colon. By taking the values of L and B, it has to return me the product L multiplied by B. So this entire lambda function I'm storing in a variable rectangle area. So this rectangle area will be used as the function name. Because for lambda functions, for anonymous functions, there is no function name. Right? So I'm passing a value for L and B. Okay. So let me enter the value for length. And in the same way, let me also enter the value for breadth. So these values got converted to float. Now I'll call the lambda function. How? By just using this variable name. And this variable name, I'll be passing the values of L and B. When I pass the values of L and B, L gets multiplied with B, which is nothing but 5 will be multiplied with 30. Sorry, 20. Okay, and the results will be stored in AR, area. And finally, I'm printing the results to the console. I'm printing the results to the console. Right. Now, I have one more lambda function example which helps us to return the biggest number and the smallest number of any given three different numbers. Any given three different numbers. Okay. Out of these three numbers, it helps us to return the biggest number and the smallest number. So let us understand how we are going to get the biggest number. Lambda keyword followed by three parameters x, y, z colon. Then I'll start keeping the logic. Okay. If x greater than y and x greater than z, that means when does AND operator return true? When both the conditions are holding true. So if x is greater than y and if x is greater than z, it has to return me x as output. It has to return me x as output. Else, what if these conditions are false? If any of this condition is false, it comes to the next block and checks for the next conditions. If y is greater than z and y is greater than x, if y is greater than both of the rest of the two numbers, return y, else it will return y. What if this condition is also false? It will simply return z, else z. So this is the logic that we are using. Okay. This is not a different one. This is representing us a conditional statement. So this will return the biggest number out of the XYZ, and in the same way I'll change the logic to get the smallest number out of the three. K less than V and K less than R will return me K as output. What if this condition is false? Any one of this condition is false, it goes to the next if block. If V less than R and V less than K, it has to return V as output, else V. What if any of this one condition is also false? It will return R as output. Okay, so let me define the lambda functions. Done. For returning the biggest number and the smallest number. Now I'll pass the values for A, B, C. Okay, so let me pass very small values 7, 8 and 9. Okay, now I'll call the functions. How am I calling it? By using the variable name itself. When I call find big function, obviously this will return as 9 as output. See, max of 7, 8, 9 is 9. In the same way, find small function will return as the smallest of 7, 8, 9, it is 7. So, instead of going with the normal functions, I am using lambda functions. What is the purpose of lambda functions? To perform instant operation. When I want to perform instant operation, we'll go with lambda function. One more small example. What are we doing here? I am defining a lambda function and I have only one, what is it? Parameter. I have only one parameter. When you pass that parameter to the max function, we know max function will return the maximum value. Okay. So this will return the maximum, the biggest value of this parameter, whatever the parameter that you pass. So out of this parameter values, the maximum value will be returned. In the same way, we also have min function. Min function will return us the minimum value of the parameter k. Right? So what am I doing in line number 2059? I'm coming up with a list object. So within this list object, I have negative integers as well as positive integers. Now, I'll use find big variable which contains the lambda function where it will return as the maximum value of our list object, because I'm passing this list object as, the parameter. What will be the value, guys? Obviously 100. Yes, the maximum value will be 100. What about find small? Find small will return as the lowest value, the smallest value. So what is the smallest value? It is minus 30. Out of entire integers, the list of integers, minus 30 is our smallest value. Right? Yes. So now let us compare the differences between anonymous functions and normal functions. Okay, because we have learned both anonymous and normal functions. Right? So when do we use normal functions and when do we use anonymous functions? The purpose of normal function is when you want to use them for long period, we'll go with normal functions. But for anonymous functions, we'll do it when in case of instant operations. In case of instant operations, we'll go with anonymous functions. Then a normal function will always contain block of statements, may or may not, again, right? Yeah, in general, you'll have block of statements, but anonymous functions always contain single statement. They contain only a single statement, guys. Anonymous functions contains name, but normal functions contains name, whereas anonymous functions does not contain name. What will be the name in case of anonymous functions? The variable acts as the name of the function, right? Yes. A normal function can return. This is very important. It helps us to return the value by using the return statement explicitly. In case of normal function, if you observe, we are using the keyword called return for returning the output. But in case of anonymous function, the return keyword is not required. Why? This is already present in it. Okay, we need not use the keyword return in case of anonymous function. And normal functions were defined using df keyword. Anonymous function will be defined using lambda keyword. That is why anonymous functions are called as lambda functions. Okay, so these are the major differences between anonymous and normal functions. So next to that we have important functions, some special functions in Python. We'll be discussing these three with some examples. Then we'll wind up the session, guys. So focus. The special functions in Python are filter, map, and reduce. So let us understand the purpose of filter function, map function, and reduce function one by one. The first one, filter function. What is the purpose of filter function? Filter function will actually help us to filter out the values. Okay, but how you are able to filter the values is you will be applying these values to a function. Here is the syntax. Within the filter function, you will have a function and iterable object. What are iterable objects? Object which contain multiple elements. So when you pass each and every value of this iterable object to the function, what happens? The filtering will be done based on the logic that we have in the function. Right? Yes. When you try to get the type of the variable name, you'll get the type as filter object. Okay. And the function name can be normal or anonymous. Any one of these two can be given as the function. And iterable objects represent list objects, tuple objects, then sequence category data types, objects, set objects, dict objects, anything. Okay. So how does filter actually work is it is clearly elaborated here, guys. Focus. Each value of this iterable object will be passed to the function. Okay. So what if the function returns true? When you pass the element, the value, if the function returns true for that value, okay, so these values will be filtered. Only those values will be filtered. What if the function returns false? They will be neglected. This will be continued towards the end of all the elements of iterable object. All the elements of iterable object. So let us focus on an example with respect to filter function. What am I doing? What am I doing? I am coming up with a list object. Yes, a list object which contains both positive and negative integers. Then I am defining a function and the name of the function is decide. Okay, where it takes only one parameter n. If n value is greater than 0, it will return as true. Else it returns false. Right? So this is the logic that we have within the function decide. So I'll be defining my function done. Now I'll use the function filter. I'm using the function filter. So within the filter function, we should pass function and iterable object. What is the iterable object that we are passing? List object. Function decide. So each value of function, each value of this list object will be passed to decide. Initially 10 will be passed to decide. So when 10 passed, is 10 greater than 0? Yes. Obviously it will return true. So we know that filter function will filter out the elements where the function returns true. So for all the positive integers in the list object, okay, the function will return true, and for all the negative integers, the function will return false. So what you are doing in short, you are filtering the values of, you are filtering only the positive elements, the positive integers. So when you see type of A, it returns as filter object. It is a filter object. And if you want to get the values that are present in A, you'll not understand it as you see them stored at the address. It returns as the address. Am I right? Yes. So how can you actually get the values that are present inside this filter object is by performing the conversion. I'll convert this filter object to list object by using list function and then I'll print the results. See. So only these are the elements, these are the values from the list object which are greater than 0, 10, 30, 41, 67. Clear? The same example, but instead of normal function, I'll go with anonymous function, lambda function. So if n value greater than 0, only then it has to return true. And this is the list object that I am passing. Okay. I am using filter function. Within the filter function, I'll use the function name decide and the list object, which is nothing but the iterable object. When I use, I'll get the positive integers filtered out, and this will print the type of A, which returns as the filter object. And as usual, when you try to get the content of A, the values or the elements of A, it will not print as it is, guys, because it is a filter object, right? So what I'll do is I'll perform conversion. When I perform the conversion to list, okay, now I can access the elements. The same code, but this is using normal function. This is using anonymous function or lambda function. Clear? Yes. Now let us understand the next special function, that is map. Next to filter, we have map function. What does map function does? Map function is used generally for new iterable object. For obtaining a new iterable object from existing iterable object. Okay. How? By using this iterable object to a function, you are going to get a new iterable object. That is the purpose of map. It will be similar to the syntax of filter. See, within the map function, you will use function name and iterable object. When you pass each and every element of this iterable object to the function, at the end you are also going to get one more iterable object as output. You'll get one more iterable object as output. When you say the type of the variable, it returns as a map object, and the function name can be of either normal or anonymous. It can take both normal functions as well as anonymous functions. And iterable objects can be sequence category types, list, set, and dict types. The execution of map is, it takes each and every element of the iterable object. Yes. Then it actually process it. It will process these. Upon the logic that we use in this function, it process and it modifies the result. The result will be returned. Okay, this is how you are also going to get one more iterable object as output. This will return one more object as output. Simple. Filter function is filtering the values of your iterable object. Wherever the value returns true for the function, only those values will be returned, filtered. But here, all the elements of the iterable object will be taken one by one and they'll be used as part of the function, and it processes the values and returns the modified values as a new iterable object. So let us work out on an example so that you will be clear how exactly map works. What am I doing here? I'm coming up with a lambda function. Okay. And the syntax is lambda keyword followed by the parameter. It is nothing but sal. So what does the logic say? The sal should be multiplied with 1.02. 1.02. So if I want to give hike for all the employees, instead of adding for each and every one, why don't I define a function like this? And if I pass all the employee salaries as a list object, see, all the salaries of my employees in the list object. In this fashion, done. Now, I'll use map function. Within the map function, we'll have the function. What is the function that I'm using? Hike, which is nothing but anonymous function. To this hike function, I'm passing my old salary list. Nothing but list object. So it takes each and every element, each and every salary value from old salary list, and then it passes to the function. It multiplies the value with 1.02 and the output will be written as, we know that it returns a map object, but I'm converting that object to list object and storing the list object to new salary list. See, I'm printing both of them. Old salary list and new salary list. All the values will be multiplied by 1.02. Yeah, you can try with any other, types as well. As we are well habituated of using list, time again I'll be using list object. I mean list function for the conversions. Okay. So what happened? Each value of old salary list was being taken from the list object, and then it was processed using the hike function, and then it is returning as the output. See, that is the purpose of map. The syntax is same. If you observe the syntax between map and filter, the syntax is same, only the function is changing. In filter it is filter function, in map it is map function. And next to map we have the last special type of function called reduce. It is reduce. So what does reduce do? The purpose of reduce is to reduce to a single value. It helps us to return as a single element or a single value when you give a iterable object to a function. When you pass an iterable object to a function, this will ensure, reduce function will ensure to return us only a single value, a single element as output. Observe the syntax of reduce. Is it similar to map and filter? Yes. It is similar to map and filter. Iterable object will be passed to the function name one by one. Okay. Accordingly, the reduce function will help us to reduce to a single value. Okay. So, and when you go and check with the variable type at the end, the object will be of type either int, float, bool, complex or str only. Because we know that only these types help us to store single values, if you remember. Right? Yes. How actually reduce work? Let us understand the internal flow. Initially, reduce function, takes the first two values of your iterable object. It takes the first two values of your iterable object. From the iterable object, it is going to take the first two values. Then these first two values will be utilized by the function. They will be given to the function. And when it is given to the function, it will also return as the result for the first two values. Yes. Yes. Immediately, the reduce function selects the third element from the iterable object, and that will be placed as first element. The result will be placed as first variable, and the third element from this iterable object will be placed as second element. So these two will be passed as, again, these two values will be passed to the function name, to the function. So this process continues. Step 2 and step 3 continues till we get only, one single value as output. But one thing that you have to observe here is, reduce function, you cannot get it as a default one. It is from a predefined module called functools. There is a predefined module called functools. Using this functools, we will be using, from functools we will be using the reduce function, and reduce function is what? It is returning as the output to a single value. It helps us to return as a single element or single value as output. So let us work out on an example. Excuse me. So what am I doing? In order to use any module, okay, we have to go and import the module first. Okay, so I'm importing the module called functools. Done. Then I'm printing a message. Enter list of elements separated by space will be printed as it is. Then next to it, I have an example for list comprehension. This is nothing but list comprehension, where if you observe, comprehensions are a concise way of keeping your code. Okay, so the for loop that we have in general, I kept it in one line, guys. Yes, we have imported the functool modules and we have to pass an iterable object, right? We have to pass an iterable object. So I'm using a for loop. Okay, within the for loop, I'm using input function. Okay, so this input function, along with input function, I'm also using split function. Input function will accept multiple values, multiple inputs, and split function helps us to split them. And all these inputs will be converted to int values, and these values will be stored as a list. They'll be stored as a list object. Okay, so if you see it is under execution, it is asking me to enter the values. Okay, I'll start entering one by one. 23 is 1, 25, 82, 45, 54, 65. Enough. I'll click on enter. Immediately, if you observe in the variable explorer, list object got created. Yes, list object got created. How many elements? 6 elements. So I'm using reduce function, guys, from functools. Okay, from functools, I'm using reduce function. What is functools? Functools is a module. Okay, the dot represents hierarchy. Functools dot reduce function. Within the function, we know that we have to pass a function. Along with the function, we should also pass iterable object. We are passing LST as our iterable object, and the function that we are passing is a lambda function. What does this lambda function say? It takes two values, x and y. Two parameters x and y will be taken, and the sum of these two values should be written. So that means initially it takes 23 and 25 and it returns 48. 48 will be returned as output. Then 48 will be assigned to x. Then for y, it takes 82 because 82 is the next element, next value in the iterable object. In this way, it adds all these numbers. All the numbers will be added and it returns only one single value as output. And that output will be stored in res. Let me print res. Res is, it's a type of, it's an int type value. Let me print the output. It is 294. You can also sum up the values, guys. When you sum up these values, you'll get 294 only. So that is how our reduce function help us to reduce the iterable object. Okay. Iterable object is nothing but an object which contains multiple values, multiple elements. What's happening when you apply reduce on it? When you apply reduce function on it, it will return us only the one value. The single value will be returned. Each and every value of this iterable object will be passed to the function. Initially it takes 2. It depends on the number of parameters also. Number of parameters accordingly it takes, and finally it returns only a single value. Okay, so this is all about the special functions in Python. What are they? Filter, map, and reduce. Okay, if you observe all of these three functions will have the same syntax. The syntax will be same. Okay, function name, comma, iterable object. But reduce function will actually come from functools module. Whereas map and filter, they are readily available in Python. Right? Yes. So we have successfully completed the topic of functions and it's time for our questions. Any questions? Guys, if you feel that the session went well, do hit on the like button and also share across your connections. Thank you for your feedback. Ensure that you hit on the like button. And if you have any kind of questions, yes, feel free to ask your questions. The feedback link has been provided. So before you leave, provide your valuable feedback. And once again, hit on the like button and also do subscribe to our channel. Right, that's all for the day. Have a great day.